In this video, we are going to talk about Iterator. Iterator is a very useful feature for Python. Iterator is a type that can be used in for loop like list, tuple, set, and dictionary. The iterator another useful feature is that function can take iterator as arguments and return lists. For example, for I sorted iterator, this can return a list which can be iterated. So to implement iterator, the class has to implement iter and the next method. The iter method will be called during initialization. This method must return object with the next method. Usually this method will return this object itself, but in some other cases it can return other iterable. So to implement the next method will be called implicitly during for loop. It must return the next value in the for loop. So this method should raise a stop iteration signal to signal the end of the iteration. So here we have the example that shows what is behind the scene of the for loop. So this is the original Python for loop statement, but the above statement, the code will be transformed to the following code, and this shows how the iterator works. So first, the iterable, the iter method will be called on the iterable. Then during the while loop, the next function will be called. Then when we capture this stop iteration signal, then we jump out of the while loop terminates. Then we reach the finally statement. So here shows a iterator example. So here we implement the iterator, and the next these two methods. The iter method returns self, but here we assign the value to the self, and in the next method we first define the termination condition. That is, when we reach the termination condition, we will raise the stop iteration signal. In other cases, we do the logic statement of this function. That is, the self n should minus equal 1. So when we create this countdown object and execute it, we will have this following output. So it's a 10, 9, and countdown until 0. So what happens when the mutating objects and are shared in the iterator? So when the object is mutated during the while loop, the while loop can detect this change. So here, when we have this list, then we create the iterable out of this list. That if we change the list during the loop, then something will change, and here we can see the change because of this mutation. But if we want to keep the original output, then we can change this iteration, this line, to be this new line. That is, we create a new list object that is a copy of the original list. Then the object will not be, the iterable object will not be mutated. So we get the same output as original output. So another thing that needs to pay attention is that we can use for loop with else statement and so if we have a break statement in for loop, we can add an else block at the end of the for loop. This else block can only be executed after normal termination of the for loop without running break. For example, here, if the stop is true, then this code will execute break. So we will not reach this line, it's reach 100. So the output of this code will only be stop. But if we set the stop as false, then the for loop will not reach the break. So it will execute this print reach 100 statement, and the output will be reach 100.